Do you struggle with feeling confident in your role as a mom? Do you often question if you can do this, if you're cut out for motherhood, if you will survive? Today on the Possibility Mom, I'm going to be joined by my dear friend, Stephanie Weinert, where we are going to expand and explore on the irreplaceable role of mom. First of all, I just want to ask, how are you all doing? How are you all doing? This week has been like the fastest and longest week in very recent memory. I don't know what is happening. I don't know if it's like Halloween anticipation and like All Saints, all the things. When you have children who participate in both things, just FYI, it's two sets of costumes, it's two sets of all the things. And when you have as many children of mine as mine, I do, I'm just going to be super transparent. Today was an interesting day getting my kids off to school with all the parts necessary they were saints at school today. Anyways, I digress. But then they're also asking about, well, where's my ninja costume? Anyways, I digress. So except that it's so related to what we're going to talk about today. So naturally in motherhood, there are things that can happen that, of course, make us feel like perhaps we are losing our minds. Tell me in the comments if you understand this feeling, and where sometimes you might feel like, oh my gosh, am I actually cut out for this? Am I going to make it? I mean, these are questions that are in my head often. I mean, I'm grateful that, the mindset training I now have, I can fairly quickly, coach myself out of some of these thoughts, but they're still very prevalent thoughts. Like today has been, I'm just going to be super transparent as I always am. Today was an interesting morning, followed by an interesting rest of my day. So today I'm so excited to bring on someone who I have gotten to know over the years. I actually don't exactly remember how we first connected, except that I think it was through just the Catholic mom, like, internet space. I think we were on a couple conferences where, we were kind of both on, and then I invited her onto mine. And Stephanie Weinert has become a dear friend. She was someone who quickly became like from an internet friend to an actual friend, like in my phone. And first of all, she's lived a lot of life. If you've been following her, she has lived a lot of life over the last little while, and we're going to get into her story of her beautiful baby Beckett and how Beckett has transformed lives around the world. And we're going to get into her thoughts on motherhood and its irreplaceability. Is that a word? It might not be a word, but the irreplaceable role of mother and what she has got cooking up, an incredible retreat experience that she has got for Catholic moms. So welcome to the Possibility Mom Live, the beautiful Stephanie Weinert. Hello.
Hello. I'm so glad to be with you.
If you are watching this on YouTube, you will be able to see that we are both wearing, I wore
That's
these.
Right.
We are wearing very twinsy earrings, not exactly twins, but Stephanie introduced me to this brand called Brinley & Co. I'll tag it in our show notes for you. But these were a gift from you when I can't remember. I did something fun for me. These were a beauty counter gift from people. But I love these, and I love yours, and I love that you are here. So let's just start with, for anyone who might not know you and your story, just introduce yourself, please.
Oh boy, that's a loaded one, Lisa. So I'm Stephanie Weinert. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I have 4 children here on earth. I have 4 in heaven. I have 3 little miscarried babies, and I lost my toddler son Beckett this past May. So it's almost been 6 months since he went to heaven. My husband is Peter, and my background was in Catholic ministry before I was married. So I got married a little bit later in life. I was almost 30 when I got married. So from right out of college till the night before my rehearsal dinner. I worked full-time in Catholic media. I was a radio show host for EWTN. I was a Catholic speaker kind of on the circuit, especially with the college age and young adults. So I was on college campuses and Catholic conferences and all that, traveling around, living a very good and in some ways exciting life. But I really always longed for motherhood, Lisa. I longed for a husband and kids and a home. Like that really was my greatest desire. And so when I was almost 30, got married, we had a honeymoon baby, and I left that ministry for the ministry of motherhood. And it's looked different for me over the 12 years now that I've been a mom. Sometimes I've been home full-time exclusively. I do homeschool my kids as well. Sometimes I've had a side hustle. Sometimes I've done contract work for different Catholic ministries. Sometimes it's been a little bit more like part-time. So it's looked different over the years, depending on my season and what we've discerned in that season. But I guess the big part of my story these last years is October of 2019, I had my 5th baby. And when we were being discharged from the hospital, we received a surprise diagnosis of Down syndrome. We didn't know he had Down syndrome and a heart defect, a really significant hole in his heart, which is shocking. That was never found because by the time I had Beckett, I was a geriatric maternity patient. So I had like 16,000 ultrasounds and all the 4D and everything. And no one picked it up, which I believe was God's way of protecting me. I didn't worry for any of my pregnancy because I thought I had a perfectly healthy baby. So I had a perfect baby, but he wasn't healthy. He was very sick. Beckett had heart disease and lung disease, which we found out over the course of his 18 months. We didn't know that his lungs were going to become the most concerning factor in his health life because we couldn't do the heart surgery he needed to live because they knew his lungs wouldn't survive surgery. So we were truly between a rock and a hard place. And the projections for his life were different. Some thought he was such a fighter, he would fight through, he would live to be an adult. Some talked about living until high school. Some were fighting to make it to kindergarten. And in April of this year, I went in for a G-tube procedure. It should have been super simple, in and out the next day. And he was like the 1 in a million case where the G-tube procedure went awry, like horribly awry. And it caused a pulmonary crisis for him. And so we went back to the hospital through the ER, and Beckett spent the last 8 weeks of his life in the hospital. So it was a long, very hard goodbye. He died May 11th this year. And so it was really through his life, even though I always loved motherhood, Lisa, I always did. I always knew that it was a very special calling. I knew that my kids were more important than anything else I do. I loved being home with them. Beckett's life, his suffering and his death really opened my eyes in a new way to the value of motherhood and the value of what we do as mothers to give selflessly for the sake of our children. And I really feel like God has given me kind of an eternal perspective on motherhood now, one that I knew here, but now I know here in a very profound way. Like, I just feel like he has shown me that the veil gets very thin with death. And I know those of you watching who have been there when someone has died know that I think sometimes we think of heaven as like galaxies away and, like this place that we could never reach. I don't believe that anymore. I think that heaven is much closer than we think. And, I walked my son as close to that door as I could. He died heart to heart on my body. I felt his heart stop. Every last breath was like as close as he and I could be. And it just really gives you a different lens on life and what's important. And so I'm grateful to God for that. I'm not going to lie and say life is easy. We are in a post-traumatic stress journey on top of grief, on top of, managing our other children's grief, spousal grief, everything. So life is hard right now, but it's also, God is very good and very gracious. And I just feel like he has just given us the gift of a perspective on life that is very valuable, and I'm very grateful for.
You know, there were a lot of people praying for that sweet child. And Teresa Owen here in the comments is saying how she remembers praying for him. And, I had the incredible, it was a very special experience to be present at Beckett's funeral. And I will never forget the words of the priest who gave the homily. I have never heard so beautifully articulated. So much so that I went home and I transcribed his funeral, his words, like literally sitting there hitting pause. Like I was like, these
Wow.
words need to be shared. Like they need to be kept. They were just so poignant about holding hope, hope in eternal life, hope that suffering has meaning, hope in all the things. But then suffering, like just the loss, like the very human emotions that are expected and natural, right? Like of losing someone we love. And so what I've observed about you, Stephanie, that is truly remarkable, but speaks to this is this tension you have very openly spoke about. And I'm sure there's so many things obviously that you have not shared with us that have, been in your head. But this tension, this how you can have hope in one hand and extreme like suffering, like just like the sadness. What has the Lord revealed to you about that ability to hold both of those things together?
I think it's his mom who's done it for me. And those of you who know my background, I was raised Protestant. I was an evangelical pastor's kid. My father left his pastorate and converted to Catholicism. And my mom and all of my siblings, we all did at the same time. I loved being Catholic, even, with my background, but Mary was always this like, just didn't feel like I identified with her. To be frank, I didn't feel like I needed her, Lisa. I just felt like I know scripture. I know how to pray to Christ. I know I'm his daughter. I just didn't need her, feel like I needed her. But when I had Beckett and started to suffer, because I didn't just suffer with his death, I was a special needs mom of a very sick kid. And special needs parenting is, it's a full contact sport. It's so hard. It's so exhausting. It demands another level of giving of yourself. Like when you get married, you understand for the first time how selfish you really are. And then you have your first kid and realize, oh, there's still a lot left to purge, a lot of virtue. And as each kid comes, you realize, oh boy, I still have a lot of work to do. Special needs parenting just takes that up a notch, and you realize, wow, there's so much still to purge, so much left for me to give here. So through just learning how deep the suffering of motherhood can be and how deep the sorrow can be, it really drew me to Mary and made me see her in Christ's life just in a different way. That's what she was doing. She held the tension, and she's kind of the perfect example for us Christians of this tension. Yes, she hoped. Yes, she believed, but she held the sorrow in her heart. And the scriptures acknowledge that. When we see an image of Mary with the sorrowful heart of Mary with the 7 swords piercing it, I mean, we see the image so much, maybe it doesn't strike us like that. Those are darts in the heart, like that a physical image of what she was bearing. And that's what we bear as mothers. And it's going to, mine is a very public, my swords in my heart are very public. But every single mother has them. We all have them. And I think that Mary very graciously shows us mothers how to hold this tension. And that it's okay. And that is part of our story. We're all going to have it. It's part of the Christian life. We take up our cross and follow. He promises the grace, but it's hard. It's really hard too.
In your journey of grief, what I started to observe was you were asking very poignant pointed questions. You were on your Instagram stories, and again, I want to encourage everybody to follow Stephanie. We'll put her handles in the show notes. I started to observe you ask very poignant questions about motherhood and ask for responses, and you would start to share them. And so I'm really curious, like, when did asking those questions, like, when did this newfound lens on motherhood, when did that start to unfold, and when did you begin to realize I've got to like talk about this? There's like a bigger conversation we need to have. When do you remember that happening?
So in April, when we went back to the hospital with Beckett, we knew that his G-tube surgery, something wasn't right. We went back through the ER, and the next day we had been admitted to the PICU. The next day, Beckett's heart stopped. So he went into cardiac arrest for 12 minutes. And I say those were the 12 minutes that changed my life, because 12 minutes, Lisa, is long enough that when you're in a crisis in 12 minutes, it feels like 12 hours. It's both short and long at the same time. But, you know, someone who's been in a car accident or a plane that has engine trouble, like they can talk about having like an outer body experience. It's not quite outer body, but it's that you see through this different lens. All of a sudden, my friend Elizabeth Foss, she described what I saw that day. Like, you know, you're at the optometrist and he's putting all these different lenses in front of your eyes, and you're getting blurry and blurrier. And all of a sudden he puts the right one for you in front of your eyes, and you see so crystal clearly. That's what happened to me when Beckett coded. And my husband and I, we stood there watching the whole thing, you know, team after team, and they were taking like 60-second turns, like, you know, pounding my son's chest and injecting all the things, trying to save him. And it was an opportunity for me, like, conscious and unconscious, I saw motherhood differently. I saw my life differently. And I think in the day-to-day, I'm a very type A person. I'm a go-getter. I have a lot of talents that can be used in different ways. And I think in the day-to-day, I think, well, here I am changing diapers or cleaning up Cheerios from the floor, and I could be writing a book that thousands of people would read and people would know my name, or I could be back on a stage speaking. You know, I've spoken on stages to rooms of 10,000 people before, and that's a rush. And it's like, you know, it's a sexy, cool job, but nobody sees me cleaning toilets. And, you know, just like how there's a mundane side to motherhood or giving of yourself to your family and your children that way, but sometimes feels, is this enough? Am I wasting my life doing this? Is this, you know, a good and worthy thing? But I'll tell you what, Lisa, when I stood there for those 12 minutes, not once did it cross my mind, shoot, I wish I'd written that book. I wish I had accepted that speaking invitation. When they called me and asked me to take my radio job back, you know, the largest Catholic radio network in the world, I should have said yes. The things that were crossing my mind were, why did I clean that toilet instead of push them on the swings? Why did I think I had to go make that money instead of just hang out with them more? Why did I try to budget so hard instead of just paying the photographer to take the Christmas pictures every year? Why didn't I put that beach vacation on the credit card and just go make those memories with the kids? You know, it just really was a different perspective. This is the funniest one I thought of, but it crossed my mind. Why have I put so much focus on healthy eating in this house? Since I had kids, I've been like, paleo, gluten-free, no processed food. I'm like, my kids hardly know what lasagna is because I'm so focused on being healthy. I want them to just eat lasagna, and I want to sit with them and watch them eat it. Like, it was just like I saw everything differently, and I saw the huge, enormous value in the mundane of motherhood. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't in a way that I, you know, now believe no women should work and everyone should be home full time with their kids. I think that is so beyond the point in the discussion, because the only person or two people who can decide that is to discern as a family what God calls you to right now. And it will change. It's not going to be the same for your whole life. There's going to be seasons, and that has to be discerned individually. So I'm very against these, you know, open public, should all women do this or all that. It's not that. It's that I want to share with women how valuable the self-gift of motherhood is. Like, this is where God is glorified. His kingdom is built on a platform that no other person can do but a mother. She gives life. She participates with God in the creation of life in a way that nothing else, no other creature can do. And she is the first one to nurture and bring the love of Christ to a soul that will live somewhere for all eternity. And, Beckett is a saint because he died in a state of grace. Like, when children die baptized and in a state of grace, the church recognizes their sainthood immediately. Beckett didn't have a funeral. He had a special, I first bought a black dress to wear to his funeral because I didn't know. I didn't know the theology. I didn't know how the church dealt with this, but he's in heaven forever. He has reached the destiny that every single one of us are working towards. And my investment in his life, which was very quiet, very humble, and very hard, has helped him reach his eternal destiny. And every single mother does this with every single soul that she's entrusted. And that has just become a passion for me. So the questions I asked, I know that was a very long-winded answer, but when I ask questions on Instagram to mothers, I just have this gut feeling that many mothers feel very less than. Many mothers feel that they could be doing something more important. Many mothers are told they should be doing something more important. I mean, you can't go to the grocery store without seeing some kind of advertisement where women should be doing something else, or something on top of, or, So I just really want to be a cheerleader for mothers to say, I know it's hard. This is the hardest thing you will ever do. But God sees what you are doing with so much love, and he values you and honors you for what you are doing for his kingdom in a way that is so set apart. So that's the fire in my bones, is to just really cheerlead the mother for being a mother, for giving of self. And I just want her to see her value in the worthiness of what she does.
I have so many questions. Oh my goodness. Okay. Question number 1. Do you eat lasagna?
Now we do. I grew up eating, my mom's lasagna recipe is wonderful. So yes, now my kids are like, oh, ravioli, all the
So your eating habits.
And it's balance. There's balance in all things. And I still, we have some health sensitivities in our family and some allergies. And so I do really value healthy eating, but I think that I was placing such a I was putting it on a pedestal, Lisa. And I think I almost felt like, to be a good mom, I needed to do that. It's just kind of on the list of things you're supposed to do for your kids these days. But, I don't think a little box macaroni is going to hurt these days, to be honest. And I think I've just relaxed a little bit. And I want, one of my core values is the table. And I like to talk with moms about core values. One of mine is, I want my kids to have the best memories of life around my table. I want them to always want to come back to my table. I want them to bring their friends to my table. It's really important for me. So shortly after Beckett passed, this is a true story. I have a library within walking distance of my house. I went and I checked out Joanna Gaines' cookbooks and the Pioneer Woman, and all the cheese and butter.
Staples. Yes, Staples. We are very cheese and butter friendly over here. That is awesome. I love it so much. The other thing that I think is very important that you noted is remind me again your title in Beauty Counter.
I'm executive director. Mm-hmm.
So just for anyone not familiar, so I am on your team for Beauty Counter, and for anybody not familiar, executive director is a very high rank.
It is. It's the top 1.5% of the company, and that is God taking care of us in 2 very hard years financially, with special needs and hospital. That was just, God has really taken care of us with Beauty Counter. But yes.
I think it's a very important thing to note about your story. Like you're not arguing that everybody needs to abandon all things and
Mhm.
like just only be, like every waking moment with their children. It's a very
Mhm.
important distinction, or a thing that you pointed out, that I like to highlight about your story. But it's that we're not in the tension. So I'm going to go back about to the tension and the holding things in both hands. That we don't think that cleaning up the Cheerios or the diapers is less than the
Right.
business building activities that we are
Mhm.
doing. Number one, it's a reality. Number two, it's all for our sanctity. But number three, that it's just like a lie of the enemy. Like let's not let that impede even the joy we can find in those moments of
Mhm.
mundane, quote unquote. So I do think that's an important thing to point out. Okay, so all of this you've turned into what is now called this beautiful platform, Mother and Home. Tell us again, was this something that was like brewing up before? Was this something that came like really in the last like 4 weeks? Like, where did this come from? And tell us about the retreat that you're hosting in December.
Okay, sure. So after Beckett passed, it's kind of like it is kind of like a midlife crisis. I mean, I went from being a special needs mom who literally every hour, night and day, was not my own. I truly almost didn't sleep for 2 years. He was up a lot in the night with someone with lung disease. They are just very fragile. And so I went from just such a pouring out of myself to having my youngest almost 6 now. And it's just a whole different family dynamic. Um, and I had a lot more time to myself, which felt very odd at first because my kids are very self-sufficient. And, in the afternoon, they actually prefer to play with themselves instead of me. So I had like this extra time. I started going on long walks and really just thinking and processing life in really long walks and asking God, what do you want of me now? Should I continue doing Beauty Counter? Because a big part of my work with Beauty Counter was helping our family with all the extra financial needs that we've had the last several years. It was just a lot, and Beauty Counter it bridged the gap for us. So do I still do that? I have quite a large team of women that I coach in business, and should I keep doing that? Is that something I should still be doing? Should I be doing something else? And just really asking, just a very open heart, I would say, very open heart to what do you want of me? And it was very, very clearly revealed to me that my focus and priority has to be my family. And everything that I do needs to be done through a lens of putting them first and pouring into them first. So once I had those priorities aligned, I was out on a walk one day and God said, you're going to host an Advent retreat and it's going to be called Coming Home. And I felt like God wanted me to host a weekend for mothers to kind of go back to first things, like very first things, almost like first principles, and contemplate Christ, their relationship with Christ, who they are. And from that lens, look at every other aspect of life. Look at motherhood, look at marriage, look at everything that you do through this lens. And then progress from there to kind of clarifying core values, and then how do you cultivate that life? So just like taking them through kind of what I have been doing since Beckett died in my own private journey here. So I'm like, okay. And as I started to talk to a tech team to build a website and how do I put on this retreat and what do I want it to look like, God just literally gave me the name Mother and Home, said, this is going to be the platform that you're going to host this retreat on. And it's very simple, but I want to pour into mothers and the value of what they do at home. And I think some women get nervous that it's just for stay-at-home moms with that name, and it's not at all. It is that Mother and Home are valuable, worthy, and important no matter what else you do. That's beside the point. But Mother and Home is so valuable in God's eyes, and He uses it so deeply to build His kingdom. So Mother and Home is the platform. I created an online community for mothers to talk off of social media. That was really important to me because I think a lot of women are sick of social media or are struggling with being on social media too much, or as just the climate changes, it's kind of really becoming hard to talk about harder things out in public. So I wanted a place that was private, that women could gather and know that they can just kind of air it a little bit and ask the hard questions or offer advice and encouragement or their journey a little bit more openly. So we have this back private members only community. And then the way into the community is our retreat. So the first one is this Advent retreat, Coming Home. And it's going to be a beautiful weekend, Lisa. I've started filming with the different mothers I'm interviewing, and I'm interviewing a wide range from mothers who are grandmothers now to mothers who became mothers at a very young age, like a full spectrum with so many different backgrounds and doing so many different things. But I picked women who I admired for really being confident in who they were in Christ. And that's what I want to show for the weekend most of all, is that if you know who you are in Christ, if you have an intimate relationship with him and are discerning your life with him, everything else is going to work. Even the really hard stuff, even the stuff that's just so hard, and we all have those, is going to make sense if you know who you are and whose you are and are seeking his wisdom for all the rest. So that's the weekend. So that all happened this summer. So it's been a kind of a quick journey of putting this all together, but it's fallen into place really beautifully. It's a virtual retreat, but it has a physical component in the mail because I wanted mothers to have something that arrived on their front porch that they could open, and just beautiful things to add to the experience. That was really important to me. Things that would make her feel loved and pampered a little bit. So the retreat is both physical stuff in the mail and a virtual retreat. And I'm just so grateful that I've been able to pull it off in a way that still honors my own home and my own family. Not that it's not crazy. We've had a few crazy weeks here. I will not lie about that, but it's something that I'm able to do from the desk in my kitchen with my kids around me and still pour into mothers this way. And I really just felt very called the end of this year to do that. So that's Mother and Home.
Melissa says here in the comments, I'm so looking forward to the retreat. I am looking forward to the retreat. I have it booked off, and I have I'm just so excited. You can grab a link to the Mother and Home retreat right here below. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's going to be in the show notes. If you're listening on podcasts, and of course in the description on Facebook. What is your hope, Stephanie, that a mom walks away with, like after the Mother and Home retreat? What's your hope for her?
My hope ultimately is that she will have an Advent understanding how God sees her in a whole new way, understanding the depths of his love for her and her place in his kingdom. So that's my ultimate. I really hope that through a real clarified list of essentials and core values, and seeing everything through this kind of eternal perspective that we're going to walk through in the retreat, that discernment and decision making is going to be easier for mothers. Because I think, every single one of us women are presented with opportunities every day, with things that our hand can find to do. And we have to discern, is this the time? Is this the thing? Do we say yes? Do we say no? And I think the core of that is knowing your core values and discerning from a place of being a daughter of God and knowing that he will show us the way. And I think that motherhood can become easier after this retreat. I really do. I think that the formula for discernment, for knowing God's will for you as a mother and knowing your place in the world is not as hard as we sometimes complicate it to be. It really starts with your relationship with Christ. It really does. And there's so much freedom that comes from that, Lisa. And I know that you know that and are living proof of that. And I know that discernment means a lot to you too. But there is like this weight that can come off when you have discerned just a few simple things, really. So anyway, that's my hope, is that there's just a clarity and a focus and a confidence in Christ that comes out of the retreat.
It really is what it boils down to. And this is where I think the internet, of course, can get very divisive, but it doesn't need to. When we understand who we are and whose we are, I love that expression. I use that a lot in my content. Who we are and whose we are. When that is very clear, and then you add on to that the skill of discernment, because I believe that discernment is a skill. Like, and I think it's one that we're not always taught. Like, because there's two things that I see in sort of the Catholic world is that, number one, maybe women don't discern. So there's that. And that's just reality. You don't discern, and then you jump into something, and then you have to kind of discern after, right? But almost a like misunderstanding of discernment that it means you have to wait forever. And I just don't, I think that's a bit of a misunderstanding. Like, I really do believe that you can discern while taking action. And I just sort of think if we can kind of clean these up, if we can clean up, like, what is your identity truly? And then skills around discernment. And that's where I just, I come alive. I get very fired up. So yes, we are very, very aligned. Discernment is so essential. And that's what answers the questions about, do I stay home? Do I not stay home? Do I, start beauty counter? Do I not start beauty counter? Like, it all has to come down to that ability to discern. So I am so excited for the retreat. I want to encourage everybody to come and join us. There are how many women? Are there like so many women coming?
Yes, there are. Yes, we have, I think, just over 1,000 women coming so far. So it's going to be a party.
It is going to be a party. So everybody, if you want to join the party, if you want to get delivered to your house, this beautiful box, I've unboxed it on Instagram. You can check it out. It's just going to be so fun. Stephanie, you are a delight. I hope I get to see you in person again.
I hope so too.
I'll never forget. There are many moments about saying goodbye to Beckett that weekend that I have just indelible, like, just in my memory. I'm obviously you do too, but I just have many, there was so many gifts. And I really believe I speak for a lot of people. I mean, you're very accessible, but I'm sure there are a lot of people who wish they could express things to you about stories with Beckett, and I'm sure you get them in the mail. Like, but I just, like, that child touched a lot of people's lives and touched mine. And when you look at the internet, yes, it can be divisive, but it can also be incredibly uniting. I think a lot of people united around that baby and you and your family. Yeah. So anyway, alrighty, friends.
Thank you.
Thank you for being in my life.
I love you so much. Thanks for having me on today.
Bye, Stephanie. Just come to the retreat, okay? Well, y'all just come to the retreat, because this is like, it is so powerful what happens when we allow the Lord to work in our everything. The Lord can work in our suffering. The Lord can work in our joy. The Lord can work in our moments of frustration, like I had this morning over where's my ninja costume and where's my St. George costume. Oh my gosh, that was literally it. It was like, anyway, the Lord can work through all of it. And I think if we can remember that we are all on this unique path with a unique call to sanctity. And these are like, I'm saying it so easily, but like, that's a profound statement I just made. When we can just remember that it's unique to us, I believe there can be so much freedom that is had. And ultimately, even in the worst of challenges, I think that's what God wants for us. He wants for us to feel free. The amount of free will the Lord has given us because he loves us is kind of astounding when you think of it. There's supposed to be freedom here. Anyway, so whatever you're feeling in motherhood, whatever challenges, whatever less than, whatever words that you have in your head or phrases, thoughts that you continue to just sort of listen to, I just want to encourage you, come to this retreat, feel reprieve, start your Advent off, in a beautiful way, get some treats for yourself, and we're going to have a grand old time. I'm so excited. All right, friends, listen, have an amazing rest of your weekend. So happy to spend some time with you here today. And we'll see you next time on the Possibility Mom Live.